Well, I mean, first of all, the main problem for the past several years, what we've done as Americans, we spent a lot of money we didn't have to buy foreign products that we can't afford. We've run up an enormous debt to the rest of the world. We've got nothing to show for it. You know, it's analogous to an individual. He loses his job, and instead of getting another job, he simply buys it.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Welcome to the April 16th edition of the Libertopian Podcast. My name is Chad. I'll be your host this afternoon, and I want to thank you for joining me and checking out the podcast. So let's hop right in here to the news, where the first thing that I'm seeing is a woman who was obviously violated by the TSA is shown sobbing and shaking after the event and during the event. It's pretty sad and pretty disturbing to watch this video. I would recommend checking it out. It's on prisonplanet.com. Title video, Woman Sobs During TSA Grope Down. There's a video there as well. And they're really not sure what it is. It looks like it has something to do with PTSD, maybe stress related, or I think someone also says on here that it's possibly rape related, where the lady had been raped in the past, and that happens all the time. You know, and the government doesn't care that it happens all the time. They don't care if you've been raped. They don't care if you've previously had some sort of incident that would cause PTSD. They don't care. All they want to do is touch your genitals. That's all they care about. Okay, they want to show you that they're God and they're going to touch you. And there's nothing you can really do about it if you want to travel. And soon it's going to be on the bus stations. They're just going to start pulling people over at checkpoints on the highways. It's already starting in some states where you're going to have to deal with it. If you want to move freely in this country, you're going to have to submit to whatever authority they feel like you need. And they just want to make you safe. That's all it's about. I'm being sarcastic, but it just shows how ridiculous things have gotten in this country. And believe me, conservatives are complaining about this right now, but maybe in 10 years, if the TSA is still going, they'll pretend like it's a conservative practice. Because that's the problem with conservatism that I see, is that once the socialists and the tyrannical politicians, whether on the right or the left, mainly on the left, get legislation through and push through oppressive programs, 10, 15 years from now, those programs are seen as conservative. They're not seen as liberal or socialist. It's just like I seen a woman holding up a sign at a Tea Party rally. It said, "Say no to socialist health care. Leave your hands off my Medicare." Well, Medicare is socialist health care. It's just for old people, but it's socialist in nature. And so I just found that funny because, socialist health care, you're supporting socialist health care. You're opposing the new socialist health care because it's not conservative. But see, the Medicare you've lived with for 30 years, so it's conservative. And so it's not really about principles first with these people. So, I'm glad the conservatives mainly are on our side right now when it comes to the TSA and either abolishing it or at least getting rid of these ridiculous measures that they're using against people. But let's be clear, if it doesn't get overturned here soon, it's probably going to be here to stay. Without a big uproar from the people. And luckily there are some young libertarians out there, even some young liberals, that the older they get, the more politically active they get, hopefully they will realize that many of these programs need to be overturned. So let's go ahead and move on. I've got a pretty funny article here from ABC News. Hillary Clinton dances the night away in Colombia. And it's pretty funny because it's got a photo of her dancing. She's doing some sort of Latin dance. She looks ridiculous, and it's pretty funny. Let me read. It's a kind of a short article, actually. Let me read this. This is from Colombia. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton kicked back Saturday night, dancing and drinking beer at a local hotspot after a day of summit meetings in Cartagena. I can't pronounce that word. Cartagena? I'm not sure. It's a foreign word. I'm not even familiar with it, but it's in Colombia. The AFP got images of the secretary dancing at Cafe Havana with her hands up in the air, swinging a local brew with friends. Clinton and President Obama are spending the weekend in the resort town for the Summit of the Americas, along with the leaders of 33 Latin American countries. So it's pretty funny. If you get some time, go by ABC News, check that photo out. I think there might be some videos out there. I'm sure someone took a video somewhere, and I think it would be some comic relief to see Hillary Clinton actually dance. So that's all I have on that front. Moving on, from Bloomberg, North Korea's Kim says his regime can't be blackmailed. So this new president, Kim Jong-un, the son of the late Kim Jong-il, who was so ronery, as everyone knows. If you've seen Team America, World Police, it's pretty funny. He was very ronery, probably died from his roneryness. But Kim Jong-un is dressed up in a Mao suit, very black Mao suit, and he's trying to menace the West. I don't particularly care. I think that we give North Korea way too much attention. He's basically playing the same game that his father played, where ever so often he would threaten to test nuclear weapons. Like he came and built a missile that would hit the United States, or really be a threat to us anyway. But just the fact that he's testing weapons, we have to intervene and make it seem like we might have to have a preventive war, if you would say, to stop Kim Jong-un from developing those weapons. It's interesting. I think mainly he's probably going to want money, because the country is on the verge of collapse. They can't even feed their people. Now, when you can't feed your people, how are you going to make a missile that's going to hit the United States? It's the same thing with Russia. The West says, oh, we've got this huge military dictatorship, this huge power, and they're menacing us. They're going to launch war against us. We have to be prepared. We have to have a build-up. But the reality is, when you're looking at these communist nations, they can't. Okay? They don't have the right economic system to be able to afford that. They can't feed their people. They can't produce the things that they need. And without proper wealth creation, which only comes through private means, the government cannot provide adequate wealth creation. You're never going to have the type of buildup that you need of a military, of a weapon system, to be a threat to anyone who has a free economy. So a lot of these two-bit dictators that are communist in nature, I think we're kind of beating our own propaganda drums to go to war to fund our own special interests. But the reality is, Kim Jong-un is never going to have the type of resources he's going to need to launch any sort of attack on the United States, much less some of his neighbors. If he ever tried anything against Japan, I'm pretty sure Japan would probably murder, just destroy North Korea. South Korea the same, because South Korea has a relatively free economy. Their people can eat, and when your people can eat, you tend to be stronger. You tend to be able to devote your time and your value to creating other things, creating weapon systems to defend your country. And North Korea is just not going to have any sort of long-range rocket capability or anything like that. In fact, the liftoff they had 2 days ago I think it disintegrated not too long after it lifted off the ground. So not a whole lot there as far as him being a threat to anyone. On the economic front, there's an executive order, I guess from the president or the EPA, that says the feds are going to try to take control of domestic natural gas production. Now, I think this is, like I said, another fascistic policy where the federal government is not only encroaching upon the states and their regulatory ability to manage their states and the resources in those states, even if a state's doing it, if they're violating free market principles, I'm opposed to it. But I'm really opposed to it if the central government's trying to do it, because it's a violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of the 10th Amendment. And natural gas production, I think, would obviously be better suited to the private sector. fully without a bunch of overreaching government regulations, and especially the feds to take complete control of the natural gas production, would be almost communist, not even fascist in nature. So it's getting to where it's not even just enough to regulate them. We almost have to, we'll let private firms do it, but we're gonna manage everything. We're really gonna take control over it and tell you what to do. And so, it's not a good situation. Like I said, I think the state should really fight back against this. This is really the proper role of the states, to fight back against a corrupt central government that's essentially trying to take over much of the nation's resources away from either state hands or private hands. And you know what? If a state, let's say my state, Louisiana, decided it would be better if they took hands off of natural gas production and let the natural gas industry determine their own supply and demand, determine their own prices, and not overly regulate them, then that would be up to that state. I think it would be the best thing to do for natural gas, to let the market regulate it. But if a state doesn't want to, who am I to say no to that state? Let that state do it. Let them compete with a state that doesn't do it. But let's get the federal government out of it. Okay, let's let the states, experiment, I would say, with what type of regulations to have and what type of regulations not to have. So that's all I have on that point. I do have a video that I do want to upload if I've got time. I probably don't have time though. I might have to edit this clip a little bit to get it in, but it's a 9/11 video in under 5 minutes, or the 9/11 conspiracy in under 5 minutes. I'm not big on the conspiracy. I do think there are some unanswered questions with 9/11 that I would like to see answered. I would like more people to be open-minded to the idea that maybe the government didn't 100% level with us on 9/11. That doesn't mean that there was some elaborate conspiracy. It just means that, hey, we're questioning. And how many times has the federal government lied to the American people? Quite a many times over our history. So I think it's appropriate to say, hey, look, I don't trust known liars. Why don't we look into this again? Let's make sure that you're leveling with us and telling us the truth. So I'm going to play at least part of that clip, whatever I can get in, and then that will conclude the rest of the podcast for today. And thank you again for joining me and tuning in. This is the Libertopian Podcast on April 16, 2012. Everyone have a good day.
On the morning of September 11, 2001, 19 men armed with box cutters, directed by a man on dialysis in a cave fortress halfway around the world using a satellite phone and a laptop, directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world, overpowering the passengers and the military combat-trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being molested by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 hijackers, devout religious fundamentalists who like to drink alcohol, snort cocaine, and live with pink-haired strippers, managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York. While in Washington, a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 in an 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the Pentagon in the budget analyst office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before, on September 10th, 2001. Luckily, the news anchors knew who did it within minutes.
Osama bin Laden.
The pundits knew within hours.
Osama bin Laden.
The administration knew within the day.
Terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
And the evidence literally fell into the FBI's lap.
That a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
But for some reason, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists demanded an investigation into the greatest attack on American soil in history. That investigation was delayed, underfunded, set up to fail, a conflict of interest, and a cover-up from start to finish. It was based on testimony extracted through torture, the records of which were destroyed. It failed to mention the existence of WTC-7, Able Danger, P-TECH, Sibel Edmonds, OBL and the CIA, and the drills of hijacked aircraft being flown into buildings that were being simulated at the precise same time that those events were actually happening. It was lied to by the Pentagon, the CIA, the Bush administration, and as for Bush and Cheney, Well, no one knows what they told it because they testified in secret, off the record, not under oath, and behind closed doors. It didn't bother to look at who funded the attacks because that question is ultimately of little practical significance. Still, the 9/11 Commission did brilliantly answering all of the questions the public had, except most of the victims' family members' questions, and pinned blame on all the people responsible, although no one so much as lost their job, determining the attacks were
failure of imagination.
Because
Nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
except the Pentagon, FEMA, NORAD, and the NRO. The DIA destroyed 2.5 terabytes of data on Able Danger, but that's okay because it probably wasn't important. The SEC destroyed their records on the investigation into the insider trading before the attacks, but that's okay because destroying the records of the largest investigation in SEC history is just part of routine record keeping. NIST has classified the data that they used for their model of WTC-7's collapse, but that's okay because knowing how they made their model of the collapse would jeopardize public safety. The FBI has argued that all material related to their investigation of 9/11 should be kept secret from the public, but that's okay because the FBI probably has nothing to hide. This man never existed, nor is anything he had to say worthy of your attention, and if you say otherwise, you are a paranoid conspiracy theorist and deserve to be shunned by all of humanity. Likewise him, and her. And her, and her, and him. Osama bin Laden lived in a cave fortress in the hills of Afghanistan, but somehow got away. Then he was hiding out in Tora Bora, but somehow got away. Then he lived in Abbottabad for years, taunting the most comprehensive intelligence dragnet employing the most sophisticated technology in the history of the world for a decade, releasing video after video with complete impunity and getting younger and younger as he did so, before finally being found in a daring SEAL team raid which wasn't recorded on video, in which he didn't resist or use his wife as a human shield, and in which these crack special forces operatives panicked and killed this unarmed man, supposedly the best source of intelligence about those dastardly terrorists on the entire planet. Then they dumped his body in the ocean before telling anyone about it. Then a couple dozen of that team's members died in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan. This is the story of 9/11, brought to you by the media which told you the hard truths about...
His head could be seen to move violently forward.
And...
They took the babies out of the incubators.
And...
Mobile production facilities.
And...
The rescue of Jessica Lynch.
If you have any questions about this story, you are a batshit paranoid tinfoil dog-abusing baby hater and will be reviled by everyone. If you love your country and or freedom, happiness, rainbows, rock and roll, puppy dogs, apple pie, and your grandma, you will never ever express doubts about any part of this story to anyone. Ever. This has been a public service announcement by the Friends of the FBI, CIA, NSA, DIA, SEC, MSM, White House, NIST, and the 9/11 Commission. Because ignorance is strength.